Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Design Room. Today, we're with Shem Phillips, and we're going to be talking about that one little bit of transfer that takes that final product into retail, and that's distribution. Shem, thank you for joining us on here for the Design Room for talking about distribution. So, when we were talking earlier, you had said that distribution for yourself has probably been the hardest part of getting a game from concept to retail. Why has that been the most difficult part?
Oh, sorry. I think it's another whole industry in a way. So you got the design, you got the product development and all that kind of stuff, but getting the games actually into shops is something that I have no skills at all for. Um, so when you're starting out this and you're very busy doing what you do well, it's hard to kind of invest time into the stuff you don't do well. So yeah, it's been a lot of time trying to learn and struggling with that. So it's been an interesting journey. And honestly, if I didn't have Renegade handling all that retail stuff now for the US and the world, it would still be very hard to get my games outside of Kickstarter.
Alright. So, what has been harder for you from the aspects between doing self fulfillment as well as having a fulfillment team to do all your work, and then getting it from the manufacturer to fulfillment center and then shipped out?
So I'll give you an overview of what I kind of do, I guess. What I would generally do is I handle all the manufacturing, or I guess talking to the manufacturer, providing the files, doing all the checks of all the products and all that kind of stuff. And then once they're finished, I then organize through my shipping agent various ships to send that stock out. So there'll be a ship going to Germany, a ship going to Australia, and Canada and US and so on. And then once they arrive at those various locations, I then have another company do the fulfillment for me. They unpack it, they put everything together in the send boxes and send them out. That's what I do for Kickstarters, and what I have done at least in the past. Um, so that has worked for me quite well, but there's still room to improve. The last year there's been quite a few issues with the shipping companies, mainly the second ones doing the actual fulfillment, just not really getting things done on time, making mistakes, stuff that I have to then try and fix in a way, or at least explain to backers, what's actually happening, when the truth is often I'm the one emailing them going, what the heck is happening? So it's interesting because a lot of your reputation as a Kickstarter company or a Kickstarter based company is going to be around fulfillment.
So,
And look, most of the time that's not actually in your hands in a way.
so what has been some unique challenges when it comes to fulfillment or distribution that you've experienced, and how you were able to solve them?
I'd say the biggest challenge for me is actually being importing into the US, um, because to import or export to or from the US, you have to have a US based entity. You have to be a company or a person living in the US and operating there. I only just managed to get my stuff into the US because the company that I used allowed me to do that. They don't like it, but they said they'll do it anyway. So that's been a big challenge. I mean, if you're based in the US, there's no issue. Because most other countries in the world, you can just basically apply to be an importer, and then that's it, you're done. It's easy. You pay your duties fees when they come in, that's it. Whereas in the US, you can't. Not anyone can just import there. So it's a lot harder. So that's been a big challenge for me. And things like I can't actually export my stock from the US. So once it's there, it's stuck there. That's quite frustrating at times, because if my stock levels don't play out how I expect them to, I might run out of stock, say in Australia or Europe, and I've got all this stock, but it's all in the US. But I have, been working on changing that system with a different company this year. So hopefully, it seems like it's going to be a far better system for me to use moving forward.
So then, what would you give advice for a new publisher who is not in the U.S., on how to solve these issues that you experienced, with them getting stuck or, not being able to send to the U.S.?
I think it's just being aware of how different countries operate with their with their customs and things like that. Talking to a shipping company is a smart move, especially one that's located in your country. So I've been using DB Schenker for 6 years, 5 years, 6 years, and they have an Auckland office in New Zealand. So it makes it a lot easier for me to communicate. We're in the same time zone. We speak the same language, same kind of slang, I guess you could say. So we understand each other a lot better. When you're dealing with someone on a different continent, it can be difficult, even if they speak the same language, because you're not on the same wavelength. So finding someone that I guess you can trust in a way in your own area is going to help. There's a lot of information online. I know Jamie Stegmaier and James Math, they do a lot of web blogs and things like that explaining the different processes. So there's a lot of stuff online you can find, but a lot of it, honestly, you have to learn by just screwing up, making mistakes, and making it better the next time.
So during this time where you've witnessed, or experienced some fulfillment challenges, has it changed the way you've changed your manufacturing or the design of a game?
Yeah, I guess it does in a way. Early on, I don't know even how it happened. I made a game early on in this weird box size, which is what is now this box size I use for most of my games. And the thing about that is you learn how much it costs to send a game of that size around the world for the shipping. So, and it's also about storage. You can, like, for me personally at home, I can store the games in my garage. They're all the same size. It makes it easy. I only have to stock certain box sizes to send the games out. So that does play on it a lot. I mean, with Circadians, the idea was out there that I don't have to use the same box size because it's not part of a trilogy. But in the end, I was like, well, I can fit it in this box, so why not? But yeah, just the way it works is like I know I can sell this for a certain MSRP. I know the weight of it. I know how much it costs to send it. So the box size is a big part of that decision in a way.
So it seems like that helps make it, easier for you to go into development of your product and into manufacturing because you already know what you're putting it all into. So how much time do you think that actually speeds up your process?
It definitely answers some questions a lot quicker than it would if you didn't have those restrictions, I guess. Sam and I are working on something which I can't talk about yet, but the question came up about, do we have 8 of these particular tiles? And I just straight away said, I can fit 9 of those on a punch board because I know the dimensions of it, I know how it fits inside the box. So we're like, cool, we'll do 9. That's a good number to run with. Things like that. And also another one where he said, can we add in, say, 2 or 3 of these cards? And straight away I know there's no other cards that size in this game. So to print 3 cards of a different size is not worthwhile from a manufacturing point of view because you want to do a certain number of cards to fill the sheet to make it worthwhile money-wise. So there's things like that you kind of learn along the way that help with the design process, I guess. Because I'm going into it with not just the designer mind, but the developer and the publisher mind as well.
Right. And so with that, does it actually then change the game? Because, what if Sam comes in and he has an idea of a certain number of tiles that, that has to be done, but it can't be 9, it has to be like 18. Or, and it becomes too big for the box. Do you guys then make your component smaller and it changes the rest of the game that way?
Yeah, there's definitely things that you can change. So like the boards and architects, they're not thick punch boards because to fit them in the box, there'd be no room for anything. So they were this the 400 GSM card, which you'll find in, say, I think Yamatai uses them for their boards. Lots of Days of Wonder games have those thicker boards, or the thick cardstock rather than punch board. So I thought, well, there's 5 of these, or 6 counting the solo. So if I do 2 more board, that's 12 mil thick, which is almost like an inch thick or whatever, punch boards. And that's going to be a big cost. It's going to take up a lot of space in the box. So we figured early on, let's just make these thick card instead. Also, it means that we could make those 5 extra promos and put them in a thin bag rather than a big block of shrink wrap. So there's things like that you could do them differently, but in the end, it's kind of like weighing up the practical versus the, is it worthwhile making everything thick board when it's not actually going to affect gameplay or affect the feel of the game so much.
That's really interesting to know that, that understanding fulfillment can change a game like that, because I never would have guessed that because of box size, you know your set cost for shipping, manufacturing, because you're dealing with a fixed space, then it changes your game. Us as consumers would never know, through the intricacies that you go through. That's really interesting.
It's quite fun though, like working within those restrictions is quite fun.
So then, continuing on the process, so you have it to the fulfillment center, you're exporting your games and importing them, all over the world. With all these changes with VAT and, now the trade war, how is that affecting you, and your fulfillment?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that affect me. Actually, one of the biggest ones is just even the change in exchange rates. So things like I'll pay the first deposit for a manufacturing in, say, April, and then when it comes to September or October, when I pay the last half, the exchange rate could shift a few cents, and it makes a massive difference to the overall cost. There's things like that change it. Things like Brexit are definitely interesting because you can no longer say that if you say you're EU friendly, it won't include the UK. So there's other things work around with that to try and offer as much tax-free shipping as you can without making it so it's not worthwhile to do it as a business point of view, because it's expensive to do that. But you try and do it as much as possible when you can.
Right. And with the changes to VAT now, how they're actually going to be auditing a lot of game companies that have been coming in, does that affect you at all? Because I know a few of them, especially here in the United States, it is kind of preached that you don't really claim the cost, so you don't have to pay VAT cost. Is that a practice you've done before, or is it something that's always something you've paid for, and now it's just like, doesn't really bother me?
No, I always pay the cost. So the manufacturer that makes the games will send out, or for me, was where I do it, they will send out the official invoice and packing list with the exact amount that the games cost me to buy from them, and that's how you should do it legally. So if I import games into the US, I'm paying the correct amount of tax and duty on those imports. I think there's definitely a temptation that's out there to try and pay less taxes or pay these things, but it's just not worth it, in my opinion. If you get caught, you're gonna get a bigger bill. So it's best just to be above board and just do it the right way the first time.
Right. I couldn't agree more. When I was part of some of these discussions, I was astonished, that it's like, you're responsible for your fulfillment and distribution, and this is part of it. And I was kind of proud of Spirit Island for going back and telling the backers, this is what VAT is, and we're not going to eat the cost.
Yeah, it's tough. It's such expensive thing to pay, but yeah, I mean, someone's going to have to pay it. So the thing is, if you say you're not going to offer the tax-free shipping, you're going to get less backers. That's the truth.
Right.
So it's weighing up, is it worthwhile, I guess.
Right. So starting out, when you were doing your first two games, and doing self-publishing, how did you do fulfillment then?
So like before Kickstarter?
Yes, before Kickstarter.
Yeah. So with that, I was mainly selling to people in New Zealand. I'd do very, very small runs of games, and it was like in the hundreds, if that. It was tiny. But occasionally I'd get a few customers overseas, and I'd just simply chuck it in a bag and send it over. Hope it arrives. But that was a much different thing. That was definitely more of a hobby in a way.
Right. And when did you get picked up by Peach State? So Peach State, Mike from Peach State contacted me. I have a feeling it was after the Raiders Kickstarter, maybe a year later. And he was very keen on the games. He liked the look of them. He liked the style of game. He played them. And he wanted to help me get them into distribution and into the US.
So we worked on that. I had some stock available. We got them into a few stores. But it was just for me, because I've never done that kind of stuff. All the systems I put in place for fulfillment were for, like 1 to 6 games going to one address, not thousands of games going to one address. So there's new challenges, new things to learn with that, because you're selling the games to a distributor at a much lower price. You're covering all the shipping costs, and then if something gets damaged, which in my case happened quite badly, you have to obviously pay for that as well. So whereas companies like Renegade, who have been in the industry a lot longer, they know all the systems, they know people, they know how things work. They don't have the same, they're not learning the same things that I have to learn and make mistakes doing. So yeah, it was a challenge, but gladly I don't actually have to worry too much about that kind of side of it anymore.
Well, that's great. But what would you give advice to a new publisher, at least who has a game or two under their name, of how to contact a distributor? Because right now, as is, a indie publisher basically has to self-fulfill, when they finish on Kickstarter.
I think there's two things. One thing is that you don't have to get your games into a store, so don't feel like you have to. It's quite possible just to fulfill everything through Kickstarter straight to your customers. What I found though was after Raiders and then Explorers, there became more of a demand. People saying, "Why can't I find this in a shop?" So I think if a company continues to release games frequently, they're going to start getting people asking that question a lot. And there is a bonus to not doing retail, because you can, in a way, say, I used to say it. I didn't say it as like a declaration, but I kind of joked about it that when people said, "Is anything exclusive in this Kickstarter?" I'd say, well, kind of the whole game is exclusive, because you aren't going to find it in your shop. So that's
very true.
It helps in a way early on. But now, if I didn't have my games in stores now, I think I'd get probably more angry customers than anything, saying, "Why can't I find it? Why do I have to pay shipping? Why do I, have to pay full price and all this stuff?" So I guess that's the first one. The second one would be talk to someone else or a company that you see doing it well, and find out how they do it. I haven't used them, but I'm aware of some companies in North America that will act as like a third party, a middleman between publishers and distributors. So I can't remember the name of them, but I think there's 2 of them at least. They will basically take your library of games. It might just be 1 game or 2 games, and they'll add it into kind of their wider library, which they then put forward to a distributor. So they're taking 20 or more games to the one distributor rather than you taking your one, because distributors don't want to work with a whole lot of individuals. They want to work with big companies, because they get more products. So that's another option as well.
All right. So from what I'm hearing though, is you're basically saying don't fret about it at the beginning. Just go to Kickstarter, self-fulfill, and the distributor will come along.
It's a different skill set. So if you're passionate about designing and producing games, then do that. Let someone else who knows how to do the business side of stuff, let them do it instead. Or you can learn it. Either or.
So one thing that I noticed about your campaigns, and I'm wondering if this actually has to do with distribution and fulfillment, is that you don't use a pledge manager.
No. I never have.
Is that because of, it's something that's taking away from, or adding to the cost? Or
it's not so much about the cost for me. So when I did my first campaign, I had a lot of add-on items, and basically if someone pledged above the minimum amount, I'd say, "Hey, thanks for pledging. What's the extra $20 for?" And they'd tell me, "Oh, it's for this particular game," and I'd record that in a spreadsheet. And it was easy to do for me. So when the campaign ends, I have everyone's information. I know what they've added on, and it was simple. But when you get to like 5,000 backers for the Raiders expansions, it starts getting a little bit crazier. But I still use that system. For Circadians, I haven't had to, because there's only one potential add-on, and it's always the same price. So there's not a need for that kind of upkeep. But what I've found doing that, while it is a lot of work, it means that you're connecting directly to your backers. You know, you email them directly and getting replies from them, which I like. It means you're not just some faceless company on the other side of the world taking their money. You're actually engaging with them, you're talking with them, hearing them and stuff. So that's how I personally do it, is I just keep a big spreadsheet. And things can go wrong with that. You can make mistakes. But it's, from what I've found, it's very minimal. And also it means, because I've got a lot of back catalog of games, it means I can actively monitor my stock during the campaign. Whereas if I just say, here's the things you can add, you can put your money down now, you can do it with the pledge manager, and then I get to the end and realize I've sold 100 more copies of a certain game that I don't have, and now I have to pay for the manufacturing of 1,000 copies, then you can get yourself into a bad place. So I think there's one campaign in the past where I had certain items available, and then I had to say about 5 days in, this is no longer available as an add-on because I'd sold out. So yeah, there's a few reasons there, I guess.
Right, and it seems like that actually inadvertently affects, no pledge manager affects, first off, your communication and building relationships with your customers, then your manufacturing, and then ultimately your distribution. So it kind of trickles down. So when it comes to distribution at that point, have you experienced an issue where that the manufacturing just, when they hit the customer, it was like, oh no, I can't believe this just happened?
Yeah, we had a few things like that. And it's hard because you want to make sure everyone gets the perfect product. We had some color issues with the Raiders expansions. Some of the paint colors were right, even though we had confirmed them and reconfirmed them during the production process. Someone at the factory just screwed up. So and it's hard because can you recall 10,000 copies of a game? It's just not worthwhile. You're going to go bankrupt. So you do your best to try and make people happy, but it's difficult. So I'd say for people wanting to go into making their own games or doing their own publishing company, be aware that that's it can be quite hard work because there's a lot of responsibility just on you. Yeah.
Right, because while you are given samples once manufacturing is done, you don't really see it after that point, do you?
You get sent out a first production copy, but at that point it's done. The only stuff they can do from that point is like put a sticker over a rule book or put a sticker on a box or something like that. You can't go changing stuff at that point.
Right, but has there ever been an instance though that you got a first production copy and to you it looked great, but then the rest of the production, or at least half, because I think Nemesis right now is dealing with that, is right. Because they had their molds melt in mid-production, and so people are having to replace now some pieces because of the fact that the faces aren't there or the detail is just washed out because the manufacturer never told Awakened Realms, hey, we had an issue.
That's pretty bad. So that's a situation where the manufacturer needs to fix the issue. I haven't had anything that bad. I've had, with one of my very early games before Kickstarter, I'm very detailed in the job sheets I give to my printers because I have a background in printing as well. So I know what to specify. I did everything to the letter, except I didn't tell them, please don't laminate my punch boards, which to me is like you just don't do that. They're either going to be like an oil finish or a linen finish, but I didn't specify. So when they showed up, basically like they're being laminated at home, I was furious. But at that point, it was too late.
Right.
This was there's only 500 copies, and it was quite localized, mainly New Zealand. So there's stuff like that where you go, darn, but what can you do? Yeah, but hopefully each kind of thing you do, each campaign, each product, you learn how to try and avoid those issues.
Now, you've experienced all those issues in the past. You've now gone with Renegade to do your U.S. manufacturing and distribution. How has that been for you, and how's that relationship worked in your favor by having someone overseas do actually the work that you would have been doing, with China.
Yeah, it's great. So after the after Reddit's got the nomination for Security R, almost 2 years ago, I had a few US-based publishers contact me straight away trying to get the rights to it, because it wasn't available in retail at that point at all, other than if I'd sold directly to a retail shop through Kickstarter. So when I had those companies chasing me up, I was like, this is a dream come true. I don't have to worry about importing thousands of units and trying to get them into shops through a distributor, because for me that was a nightmare, because it's a massive job and lots of things can go wrong. So I had to make quite a quick decision on who to go with. But I'd met Scott from Renegade briefly at Essen the year before, and seemed like a good guy. So we Skyped, and I always liked the kind of the way Renegade present themselves, from a their typefaces, their logos, everything like that, how they talk on social media and that kind of stuff. So they felt like the best fit for me, and I definitely feel at this point I've made the right choice still. But it has come with challenges. We had issues last year with both Rocks of Ruin, the expansion for Explorers, and Architects being released in certain countries before the Kickstarter ones had come out. And that was horrible. That was like months of me just grinding my teeth and just being furious with myself and with various distributors for that reason. So it brings new challenges. So moving forward, I have to be a lot smarter with that kind of stuff, making sure that all the Kickstarter rewards are sent out before anything like that happens. But even then, last year I thought I had planned it well, but then you get delays that you don't expect and that kind of stuff. So makes for new challenges. Every year there's something else. There's at least one thing I'm learning. So maybe in 20 years' time I'll have it figured out. We'll see.
Well, I think that's great that you're still using every experience that you've garnished to get better. Because that's all we can ever do is improve on
totally.
ourselves and what we do. Going from there, how do you continue on with your customer relations with your customers? Do you feel that once a campaign is done, reminding them and talking to them every week until fulfillment's done, or is it like a monthly thing that's good for you? I asked this because we actually had a discussion about a month ago asking what is an appropriate amount of time that a publisher communicates with you. And this was after, Space Goat, had happened. And then you had that Waking Sands issue. And what was it, Soda Pop, I think? I can't remember the third company. But basically, communication just stopped. And the customer's like, whoa, what happened? So for you, what do you feel is best in keeping these relations up?
So I'm always active in the comments section. So if I get a comment on Kickstarter, I reply usually within 12 hours, if I can. But I think for updates on Kickstarter, I think a month is a reasonable time to wait. There's certain periods during production where there's going to be more information given. You're going to be getting the samples so you can show photos. You're going to be maybe doing an unboxing video of the first copy you get, that kind of stuff. But there is definitely a good solid 2 to 3 months where there's nothing to actually talk about. So you have to kind of plan out. I usually will just check quickly, like, when was my last update? Oh, it was 4 weeks ago. Should do a new one right now. And those updates are usually just like, it's all going well, thanks. There's not much to really share. But I think it's important to do them regardless, just so people know that you're still actively working on stuff. But yeah, and during shipping and stuff, there's tons to talk about. You can give up,
right.
You can tell the information on the ships that are coming in and all the timelines, but there is a big gap in the middle where there's not much to say.
Right.
But that depends on certain companies. Some companies go into Kickstarters with there's still a lot of development work to get done, whereas I prefer to have it all done before the Kickstarter launches. So there's just really like pre-production, there's a big gap in the middle, and then there's fulfillment.
So how transparent do you find that you need to be as a game company when it comes to when you're in that distribution process. And like you said earlier, things happen in manufacturing, things can happen in shipping, things can happen by the end of fulfillment. Do you feel the need that everything should be explained to backers, or only the worst case scenarios?
You don't have to share every little story, but I think being transparent is really important. But also, I think you've got to show some tact as well. So knowing how to say it and what to say is really important, because you want to come across, you want to show your customers or your backers that you are confident and that you know what you're doing. If you start freaking out, I've seen a lot of posts. I don't want to make it sound bad, but I've seen a lot of posts coming out on Kickstarter that I've backed over the years, where there's this big backstory about what's happened in their personal life. Like this bad thing happened, sorry, we've been slapped, rah, rah, rah. And I think that might be okay if you've got a small following and people are sincere, but I think quite often that's quite inappropriate. That's at least how I see it. I mean, we had some huge things happen to us in the past few months personally, but that's not going to come out on a Kickstarter update because that's your own personal stuff.
Right.
So I think it's being professional, but yet transparent when you can, as much as you can, because at the end of the day, you're a business, and you need to act like one. So, yeah, I've seen varying kind of ways of doing things as I follow other Kickstarters, which I guess I kind of learn from. Like, I won't be doing that very anytime soon, or they should really explain that a lot more. So it's just, I guess it's like when you're doing brand development, you talk a lot about kind of your personality as a company or as a business or as a brand. So it's kind of knowing how you want to present yourself. So I've chosen through Garphill Games to be, open and transparent, but clean, clear, direct. I'm not going to get kicked through the dust by people, but I'm going to be also, compassionate and empathetic towards people as well. So it's just knowing how you want to be, how you want to treat your customers and how you want them to treat you as well. It's quite important to know that when you start out, I think.
I think, you're absolutely right. That actually leads me into my next question was, do you then look for companies that fit your branding? Because you were saying how Renegade, you felt just right with them. Now, what about when it comes to your fulfillment, group or your manufacturer? Is it the same way? And do you feel that builds a stronger relationship?
Yeah, definitely. I think in anything in life, if you're building a relationship with someone from a business point of view, how they are as a person to you is very important. So with the big fulfillment companies that I've dealt with in the past, to me they're like Microsoft. They're just big companies that I don't really know who they are. I've dealt, like the people in Auckland, New Zealand that I deal with, you do start to form a bit of a bond and a connection with them, which is good. Dealing with Happy Shops in Germany has been great because you know them by first name. You can talk to them about anything. That's great. This new company that I'm working with, starting with the fulfillment for the Raiders playmat. This will be their first time fulfilling for me for that. They seem great. I've talked to them. I've seen them on camera. I've seen them talking to their following, and I'm like, these are good people. They kind of, there's certain people you click with in life, that you connect with. So it's knowing those kind of people and being able to connect with those sort of people, I think is very important. So yeah, like you said with Renegade, straight away I was like, oh yeah, these are the kind of people I could just sit down and chat with and feel comfortable around. And I think that's really important, because if you get into a relationship with someone who's very strong-headed or very opposite thinking to you, you're going to clash, and you don't want that happening.
Well, not just that, they're also, when they're making, your product or fulfilling your product, they're a representation of you. So
yeah, totally.
You don't want a company that is going to tarnish your reputation.
Yep.
And have you experienced that in the past where I can guess, first off, that big mistake that you were telling us happened earlier, kind of puts a little spot on you.
Yeah.
So what do you do to deal with it then?
For those, that's all manufacturing that I've had issues with in the past. So I've used about 5 different manufacturers across China. And yeah, there's been some that have been great and I'd work with again. There's been some that I wouldn't ever go to again, ever, despite the emails every few months. But it's just, yeah, you got to learn and you got to experiment. I mean, early on, I deliberately used different manufacturers just to try and test the waters. So I think that was a good thing to do. Um, I used Panda for a long time as well. They've been great. They're great people to work with. Um, and yeah, so it's just something that you have to kind of figure out and learn, I guess. Because the thing is, when you get approached by a manufacturer or by a fulfillment company, you're talking to their salespeople from the very start. So they want to sell you their service, and it's hard to kind of to break through that sales pitch to try and understand, are they the right fit for me? So it's a risk, I guess, and you have to do your best to determine if it's a good fit or not.
All right. Moving forward, because first off, I think this is all fantastic information for new designers and publishers. But there might be a change within Kickstarter due to what Monolith is pitching for their next game. Do you know about this?
Is that the kind of $1?
No. What they're doing is they're pre-making the game, basically as if it's retail, putting it into fulfillment centers, and then doing their campaign, and then shipping it up almost immediately. Do you think this is going to have a bad effect for the indie publisher or publishers like yourself who, you get a game developed, but you need that money to actually make it?
I think it is weird. I think it's strange that people would do that, but I do understand that the truth is that Kickstarter is a marketplace. It's not just a site to get funding. It's a pre-order system. It's a place where people actually browse to buy games. And people can argue about that all day, but that's the truth. So while I don't think it's the best thing to be selling something that's already made, I don't think Kickstarter as a company have an issue with it because they're getting their paycheck. However, I don't think it actually punishes the indie publishers either. So there's still space for everyone on there. And you can see that when you browse Kickstarter, there's still a lot of smaller projects getting funded. But I think there is definitely competition to put out a very nice looking product. So I think that's where a lot of companies fall short, is they cut corners on art, or they don't really know. Maybe if it's a one person company, they actually don't have an eye for design, for graphic design. So their products are going to suffer because they don't look as fancy or flash as these big companies. I guess I'm somewhere in the middle still. I'm not, I don't spend tons and tons of money on sculpting minis and doing flash videos and stuff like that. But I put all my focus into making the game itself. And then the Kickstarter's like, I guess you could say, be a minimum just to get it to look as good as possible.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's room for everyone. I don't think it's going to have a negative impact. It may have a slight negative thing. You get people bickering about how they treat it like a pre-order system. But at the end of the day, everyone can make up their own mind. There's a lot of people on Kickstarter, as you can see from the campaigns, like what they call kittens in the blender and stuff. You get tens of thousands of people backing. There's a lot of people browsing. So if you can make a product that has a market, then Kickstarter's great for that reason.
Right. But to just play devil's advocate here, you had made a comment on quality of a product, and throughout the years since when you first launched on Kickstarter to what it is today, what was available back then would not be acceptable today. Because that's the market's shifting, and games and game companies having to do better and better and better than themselves. That now an indie publisher has to almost ask for a lot more than a bigger company because they don't have the overhead money that they can put into it. So is it possible then that this could have a same effect? Because as they start fulfilling, like having immediate fulfillment, that it could affect you because you're actually an indirect competitor with them.
I suppose it could look, people might start saying, hey, they can deliver theirs in 2 months, why is yours going to take 9 months? I can see that being as a negative thing that could come out. But I mean, again, you build your own reputation, you build your own brand, and people learn to understand what to expect from you. But obviously, if it's a first-time publisher, you don't have any reputation. No one knows what to expect. So So yes, they could definitely, people could, and they do it to me as well. They project their own expectations of what a Kickstarter should be onto what you're doing. When the truth is, there's no rules for running a Kickstarter. You don't have to do stretch goals. You don't have to do exclusives or day one pledges, that kind of stuff. But people have expectations, and you need to know that going into it. Which is why you'll see on my campaigns I explain why there are no stretch goals. So it's knowing your audience, knowing the market is very important if you're going to start doing this as a publisher.
I think the best way I've ever heard Kickstarter explained to me as a publisher point of view is that Kickstarter is like the Wild West. No one has it right. You guys are all trying to grasp at getting the best to your customer. And, while what works last week may not work next week when it comes to,
sure.
Marketing, campaigning, actually even product or fulfillment. It's all variant and all changing. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So for you, how are you in a distribution sense? How have you had to change with the times?
So for me, it's about improving what I've already started, I guess. So with me changing fulfillment companies and manufacturers over the past couple of years, it's about making that process quicker and cheaper and more efficient. Because there's so many companies out there that can help you. They all have their different systems and schemes and prices, and it's hard to know who's right for you. And it's until you actually use a company for fulfillment and know how it works, you don't know exactly how much it's going to cost at the end of the day. So what I hope is that this year we'll see a great, a quicker fulfillment and a better price, so that say if at the end of this I realize, I can bring my prices down for shipping, then I can do that for future campaigns. So it's just that kind of stuff.
All right. So last question, what would be the biggest single advice you would give a new publisher or designer when it comes to distribution? That one piece of advice that you wish you had.
I'd probably say talk to people who have been there is the smartest thing. Because there's so much to learn. If you can have someone coach you along, then that's even better. Otherwise, I would say know what you get yourself into, and don't feel like you have to do retail for distribution from the very start, because that's not the be-all and end-all. Yes, you'll sell a lot more copies of games, but it's also a lot more work. So it's about knowing, what do you want to do? Do you just want to design games? Then just do that, because that's fun and it's great, and do that well. It's quite hard wearing so many hats all at the same time. So do what you enjoy, and if you can find people who can do the other stuff, then do that. There's a whole lot of advice somewhere in there.
Shem, thank you so much for giving us your time to do this interview. This has been really insightful. Good luck with you with Sarcadians, with Paladins in March. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
All right. Well, you guys heard it from Shem. When it comes to distribution, it comes down to, first off, talking to people in the industry. Don't worry about retail. It's not about getting a distributor. It's about your game, and to get it into the hands of your fans and your backers. And lastly, just don't stress. If it's not something in your wheelhouse, don't be afraid to actually talk to somebody else who that's what they specialize in. Because if you do, you're going to really just stress yourself out and make it so that it's going to be harder for you to make that game and go and make other games like Shem has. He has a fantastic record behind him, and he started just building and distributing locally. Well, guys, thank you for joining us on the Design Room. My name is Marco, and we'll see you next time.